Hello and thank you for tuning into Stampscaping 101. This is a scene that was just completed and I was able to use a couple of the designs that I haven't used in a long time. Well, not a couple of them, I guess one main one, and that's the boulders with trees. I've used it down here and up here, kind of placed behind the ledge stamp off to the side. But anyways, I wanted to depict, something of a hike up in maybe high elevation where there's a lot of granite, and featuring this little hiker and child stamp. Working on a little bit of a series of how many I don't know, but in designing a landscape, a setting for those two figures, I stamped out this twice, okay? And the ledge stamp is stamped over here twice, but that gave it a nice, really good foundation. But within all of that, kind of that space and all of that texture, what we want to do is we want to give a little bit of variation within that space. Otherwise, things can look kind of flat. So this is a really good example of where kind of oscillating the lights and darks within a space really helps to, give some depth, the illusion of depth into a given space here. So what we call this in kind of artwork, or one term for it is, it's called checkerboarding. It's where you leave some areas light, dark, and light, and dark, and light, dark, light, dark, light. Okay? Now, in something like this, none of that has to be planned, as I explained in the video. It's just a matter of laying down some inks somewhere. I definitely go into something like this with no plan. It would just been fine if this area was light and this area was dark, dark, and this area up here was lighter, This area could be dark. But just as long as there's a little bit of an oscillation going on, I think it lends itself to a much more interesting kind of dimensional space, okay? And that's all there is to really lighting. It's just kind of laying down some light tones and then building upon it. You can take your cues from the designs themselves too. You can see on the designs where some areas are just toned in. They're darker than others, okay? And that's largely where I start. I'll start adding in some tones here and there. And even like this one, you can see right here in the cracks, there's certain areas that are just a little bit darker than others. So as we start applying some of the tones down here, we start to develop that. And this one, it didn't really take too much. It was like gray and black for the most part. We've added in some other colors in here to kind of widen the range of colors in terms of the color scheme. But going back into these little areas right here and just, with some alcohol markers and just reiterating what's going on in the shadows within the designs makes this a really easy process, and takes it, makes it into a nice incremental process in terms of your values are concerned. And, the biggest point to all of it is it's lighter just where you want it to be light, okay? Just by simply not coloring in certain areas and just retaining that lightness of, I don't know if it's the white of the page there, but it's close to the white of the page, so just not going into some areas with your medium and darker tones. That's the same thing that's going on here. We have this little oscillation of light and dark. It's dark, light, light, dark, darker out here, light here, all right? And it's not really strategic or anything like that. So anyways, that's what we get when we retain certain areas of light and dark. There's a little bit of push and pull in terms of shadows and things like that, dimension. But otherwise, this is a perfect example. Instead of taking a field of grass like in the previous scene, we just took a mass of rocks, but there's depth within that space there. Okay, so that's really fun stuff, and I can't wait to get started on the next scene in the series, as I mentioned at the end of this video. I think kind of going midway through it occurred to me I want to do, the next one will be a beach scene featuring those two figures. Alright, if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it, and as always, thanks for tuning into the channel. Okay, the second scene in a kind of a thematic series. I don't know how long, many of these scenes I'll do, but it's kind of featuring this hiker and child stamp. It's kind of fun to work in some kind of, I don't know, thematic arrangement of scenes based on, could be an image, could be a time of day, season, color scheme, anything you really want to. And I don't know, it's just kind of fun to kind of think, you know, kind of beyond the single scene once in a while in terms of images or pieces that really could be displayed together or separately, whatever. And that it just kind of makes you think kind of beyond the image, you know, the one piece that you're working on, and it's kind of fun to see what, you know, comes out from that. This is the Boulders with Trees large stamp. I'm just going in, I colored it in black, and just going into some of these areas and doing a little touch up with some of a pretty dark green here. I never really know how it's going to turn out when I do this kind of this additional tone, but I do know that instead of just doing all black, you know, there's a better chance of, you know, getting a little bit of variation happening within the impression itself. So I don't know. So I give it a try. And the thing is that if there isn't very much variation to it, it's not really a big deal. But if I get some, then all the better. Okay, now for this hiker and child, I want there to be kind of some area to explore. I need to put them on something, okay? So this Boulders with Trees large, I'm going to have to position it so that I do have space for, I think this ledge stamp will be good. I think I'm going to put the figures on top of the ledge. I'm not sure yet, though. You know, we'll see what comes out of this. With large stamps, you know, you don't have to use the whole thing. You know, it doesn't have to be a single-use type of thing. What I'm thinking about doing is I'm thinking about adding this, these rocks behind it, and then maybe going for another impression of this boulder with trees behind the ledge. Okay, so it's kind of layering the same image within the same scene. So okay, I got a little bit of variation, and there's a little bit of brown and a little bit of green. I know they look real similar, but there's a slight change in hue within that tree I can see. They're dark because I don't want it to be a bright green or anything like that. I just want a subtle, some subtle variation. Okay, this is the ledge stamp. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm thinking about kind of this area that we used to go in the Sierras every summer. It's called June Lake, or it still is. And I'm thinking about this, you know, little hike that we went on just in the area surrounding the I'm trying to think. I think we stayed in this little, either we used to stay in this little motel there and go fishing every summer. But one time we rented this this trailer in a kind of or a mobile home or something like that, which was really fun. And we stayed in this little park there. And there's areas to go hiking all around it. Okay, that was the second impression. And I'll go for one more impression over here. But anyways, out in the Sierras, there's a lot of granite, large granite, and I don't know, I wouldn't say it looks like this, but there are certainly some areas that are like that. I don't know, maybe that's why I love rocks so much and climbing around in rocks and exploring them. Okay, now, do I want to go... Alright, I said I was going to do this. I was starting to think, well, maybe I don't need to do it after I stamp these in here. It looks like a pretty full composition at this point. But let's just do that. Let's go for that layer. Alright, now I really just need to ink up the top half of that. But, now let's add it right around here. I'll mask off these, that ledge. Stamp. Alright, I need to, let's see if I have something that matches that a little bit more in terms of my ripped paper towel mask. Something like that, have some of that ledge showing, okay? And we'll go for about right here, I would say. But I love climbing around rocks and exploring them. It's a really fun kind of style of hiking. Then I started doing that as an adult out in like the deserts and mountains, local mountains around Southern California. But it kind of all started in the Sierras as a kid. And that was my favorite thing. We would go up in the Sierras to do a lot of fishing, trout fishing, but I think I enjoyed kind of exploring more, getting out. So, whenever my dad would take the time or get away, he'd take me out for a little bit of a hike. Alright, now, these little figures, I think it's going to be too busy in here to place them kind of in this area. So the area where I've left, this room is right up here, okay? Kind of right at the little, summit of this little outcropping rocks. I don't know if it's an outcropping, it's probably a full mountain, but anyway, something like right here. So that being said, I don't want the background too busy, so I don't think I would put something like this cloud, even though I could stamp it out in a very light color, like a light blue, and if I stamp these figures in black, they would stand out, more in the foreground, but I still don't think I want to put any sky image in the background there. Alright, now let's keep this palette a little bit simple in terms of the rocks here. When I'm doing this, I'm thinking of granite, okay, so I'm going to lay down some gray, maybe some blue tones, and some black to kind of define the shadows in here, and then we'll go in and we'll add a little bit more color just so that it's not so well, it's going to be monochromatic for the most part within these rocks, but what we want is some variation. That's the word I'm looking for. Okay, now I could just go straight on with like a Marvy gray, but let's try the London fog first, I think. And we'll see what we get out of that. Now in here, this is one big kind of textural statement, okay? We can see this rock in here, and we can see how everything blends in with one another. See, when I look at the top of this rock right here, I can see that that's the same rock as this one over here, but it's really not a problem for me. For me, it's not so obvious that it is. And here's this ledge, stamped twice, okay? Really three times, but I don't know. It doesn't look so repetitive, you know, kind of if you change the angle and portions that you use, everything kind of blends in with one another. Okay, now that being said, since everything blends in with one another really well, we want that continuity. But we don't want just this area to be toned in the exact same value, okay, of gray and black and blue and whatever we use in there. So we want a little bit of variation in here. So there is no set area that I'm really thinking about at all when I'm approaching this. I just kind of start toning in. Now, around some of these rocks down here, you can see where it's a little bit darker. I might get darker in those areas, okay? But where I do that is not going to be quite as important as if I do it, okay? Meaning, I just want some variation here and there, you know, between, you know, some light and dark tones, dark values. Alright, so just adding some in here. You can see some kind of shadows and light starting to appear, right? Okay. Now, for some of you watching this, you're going to say, well, you don't know where to put it. And in something like this, neither do I, all right? I'm just building it up slowly, all right? Now, this isn't happening with like a turn of a knob, you know, where you flip the switch and it's already set. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of adding in some areas here and there. See, I've kind of add a little bit of tone right back there. Now this is kind of illuminated, right? And that's what I want. You just want this kind of a little bit of an oscillation of light and dark within your scene. All right, just add things slowly. You don't have to go to a really dark gray real fast. You can just kind of put a few little taps down, put a few little more, and take a look at it and see if, you know, it's kind of looking good to your eye. You can call it kind of a checkerboarding of the terrain here, of the surface, okay? Just for the sake of variation, I'm starting to get a little bit of fingerprinting up here in my sky area, because I have that ink down here was kind of wet from the impression, the initial impression. Not a big deal though. But back to shading. See, I'm just kind of adding this here and there. And if I like it in a given area, then what I might do is I might strengthen it, if I think that'll be a good idea. And if I don't know if it'll be a good idea or not, then why not do a little test tapping of some color and put a very pale version of it down, okay? So what we get is something like this, okay? You see that? I think that looks fairly natural, you know, to have it, you know, this oscillation of dark and light and dark and light and dark, you know? Things like that little thing in here, that rock's kind of standing out to me a little bit. Too much maybe, so I can put a little bit of tone on it, just like that, right? I mean, this gray here, this is, you can almost just be done with it, you know, in terms of the toning here. I mean, that looks, you know, pretty model to me. You know, if I did this again, chances are that it wouldn't be, I wouldn't have toned in the same place. But you never really know. I don't know. When I do a composition, I don't really revisit it for a while. it's been a while since I even used this Boulders with trees. So, but that being said, going back to that, if I was to do this again, I don't think it would look the same because, you know, unless I'm going off of some kind of like I don't know, subconscious, intuitive lighting scheme in here. I really didn't know where I was going to put any of the ink, you know, when I was looking at it. Even when applying it, I didn't know. So that being said, don't worry, you know, you don't have to know, you don't have to have a kind of a lighting scheme in mind. What you do is you just kind of build it up slowly, and all you have to do, the trick to it all, is that I'm going to add in more color to this, but I'm just going to retain some of those light areas, okay? I can, you know, it doesn't have to be as light as that, but for the most part, they'll be somewhat illuminated, just for the fact that I don't cover them up with all of the same value of ink, or the same kind of application of some ink. Alright, now there's these little cracks in these rocks, right? We can see these, and I'm kind of tilting my applicator and putting a little bit of shading into some of these little cracks just to make them look a little bit more defined. Like say something like that. There, it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more tone in that rock now. Or in that crack in the rock. Those are all little detailed things, and it's easy to do. Just a few little taps. You're just kind of reiterating. In this case, I'm just reiterating what's already in the design. And I'm having a lot of fun with this design here. This is the ledge that I'm adding these little shadowed details to. And in the boulders with trees large. Okay. Alright, so we have something like that. We'll see if these rocks seem a little bit more dimensional to you. I can use some right here. See that right there? Where did it go? Right here. So that rock looks a little bit more round to me now. Or there's just a little bit more kind of volume to it. Like that. Okay, so it's just kind of adding a little shadow in there. Then we look at it like that. So it kind of creates a little bit more dimension between all of the different shapes in here, the different imagery. Like I said, there's more volume to the forms. Okay. Just by stamping it out, I mean, you get a little bit of volume because there's shadows and lights and darks within the design itself, but just going in, adding a little bit more tone. If you're working with colored pencils or something like that, it's really easy to do as well. You know, soft media. Okay, so right in there as well. So you get a little bit of a separation in there. And, you know, this rock seems a little bit more pulled out, and this rock in the background seems pushed back just by shading them differently than this area right here. Okay, so I'm trying to think if I want to. Let me go with a little bit of this Marvy gray. Let's see if that adds anything to it. I'm not really looking to add this in a different area than the Memento gray. But sometimes grays are different temperatures. There could be a warm gray, cool gray, neutral gray. And if they are slightly different, or even if just the value is a little bit different, it can add to the overall kind of range of tone. Okay, I don't think that did too much, but I wanted to do that maybe before I went in with black. I don't know if I even need black in there. It kind of looks okay as is. But, well, we'll figure that out. Okay. I'm looking for a clean tip here. I think this one's clean. It looks real dirty because it's stained, but it's pretty clean. I think. Let me try it. Yeah, it's pure blue. Okay. Let's start on the sky here. Alright, now the figures are going to be kind of right at the little summit area, so I'll kind of leave that a little bit lighter. And my Marvy black is really black, so I'm kind of dragging off some of the color. I re-inked it recently, if not yesterday. So I'm kind of dragging some color. I shouldn't have put so much ink into it, but not a big deal. Okay, I'll leave a little bit of a somewhat illuminated area right here, because I know those figures are going to go right here. Okay, that's blue in the sky. That's a Adirondack Lights Aqua. But let's add some of this tone down here into the rocks. Okay. Now we're looking at a cool blue. I mean, cool gray in terms of temperature. Some of these areas. It adds a nice, rich, I don't know if it's glow, but certainly a nice, rich kind of variation within those forms, I think. It kind of tints it a little bit, okay? You see the little tinting of bluish hue within that, within those grays. Okay, that's that color. Let's go on to another light blue. Something like a Marvy number 60, the Salvia blue, or this Memento Summer Sky would be fine as well. Let's try the Summer Sky. Slightly different hue, different blue. Okay, the Memento is really, really light. So if you don't have something like an Adirondack Lights Aqua that I just used, the Memento would be fine. There's your color. Okay, I didn't use that. I'm getting lost here. I thought I used that. Okay, this is your salvia blue. It's a fairly light blue, but darker than the aqua. Add some of it down the shadows as well. Okay. We have the sky kind of starting to be a little bit more defined. It's just a little strip of a kind of a sky area. I usually go with a darker blue up there, but I think I'm just gonna, I think I just like it as is up there. I don't know if I want to add anything more in that sky area at least. Okay, now let's do something here too. Let's add a little bit of variation to those rocks. We have cool tones right now. Let's go for like a distress ink antique linen, something warm, light, and it's a color that if I use it on here and I don't like it, it's not really a big deal. Alright, what I see I like. Okay, now I'm kind of adding this in the areas that where I retained some of the white of the paper, okay? Let me see if you can see it in this video screen here. Alright, this is where I've added it, right? I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit of a warm glow. Now over here I didn't. Okay? So maybe you can see the difference between this and over here and over here. Okay, now I did add it down here already. But like this rock up here, see how it's kind of a little bit of different temperature. So see, that's one of the things you can work with, kind of subtlety, alright? You don't have to jump into a really dark color if you want to test something out. It's very light. In fact, if I just do a couple taps, you really can't see anything at all. So, takes a little bit of time, but how much time really was that, you know, to add up this one color? It's, you know, it's 15 seconds or something like that. But that, my point is just start kind of light, and then you can work into the darker tones if you want to. Like, alright, I like that, but I want it a little bit darker, then go darker. But that's where all the control comes in. I rarely run into something where I get this kind of unintentional mark that's just, you know, really obtrusive to the overall scheme, and I can't remove it, okay? It's because everything happens kind of like a knob turning, you know, with 100 little, you know, positions on it, but you're just turning it at like one by one each time, okay? Okay, this is a little bit of green here. It's not really lichen, but I don't know if lichen's really green or some forms of it, but just to warm up some areas, a little bit of variation, a little bit of that warm green glow on a couple of these rocks. And again, it's just to kind of liven things up a little bit in some areas. Okay, we can see this little green stain, you know, in some ways. Put a little bit down here as well. Maybe there's a little bit of moss or something, I don't know. But a little bit of grass, mossy tones in here for variation. It's a little bit of a temperature change as well. Okay. All right, now I think I will add those trees, some foreground pine trees, just to increase the depth a little bit. All right, these guys are a little bit big for that. I can put them up there, and it would just, by scale, it means that these rocks are kind of smaller, all right? But after all, this is what I was stamping this out for, so I'm going to use this right now. I want to keep working on this, but I'm going to have to wait for this one to dry, especially with this really wet ink pad here. Okay, I tell you what, I'm going to wipe off a little bit of their feet. And I'm going to aim them right about like so. Okay. So for me, it looks like they've hiked up this way right here, and are going up that way. That's what I would see if I was kind of reading, you know, kind of a area of rocks and figuring out the path I was going to take. Okay. And this is my pine stamp, and I think I'm going to go down here. Kind of stamping it, oh, what is that, 2/3 of the stamp maybe? A lot of it is off the page, because I didn't want the whole thing. Adding a little bit of depth, hopefully, visual depth. And there's the repetition of form happening in here. We have large versions of pine trees, medium, small, and that can kind of create some continuity within the scene. And as far as design, kind of harmony, kind of a repetition of form, kind of lends itself to that kind of a harmony, visual harmony. All right, so here's another one right here. And I usually have kind of an odd number of forms, at least as it applies to the foreground, if they're going to be very obvious in terms of kind of a similar form, like a dominant form like these trees. Okay, something like that. Actually, that still seems a little bit unbalanced to me. So I'll group these ones, all 3 in 1. I'll just use the tip of it here. Even though I'm using the tip of it, I kind of inked up more than I thought I would need. Okay, that looks a little bit better. I think in terms of visual weight, that's better because I have these 3 trees here, and that helps to balance off this large Boulders with Trees stamp. Okay, so that is that. for now, at least. That's what we're looking at, a pretty fast scene. Certainly in terms of the composition, but also in terms of the toning. Those trees, those figures right there, are really wet right now. So we'll come back when that's dry and kind of set up, and we'll finish some little touches on this scene right here. So kind of fun. Yeah, I definitely like all those little rocks and what's happening in there so far, and it'll just be a matter of kind of finishing them off in some way. Okay, I've stepped away for probably about an hour or so. Come back, and I'm taking a look at the scene, and I feel that it seems to need something to me. I'm not really quite sure what it needs, but one of the things I'm thinking about it is a little bit of extra tone in terms of a warmth within those rocks. I think a little bit more of a kind of a temperature change within that space would kind of bring it to life a little bit. Maybe one of the distress inks again. I don't remember which one I used. Antique linen or tea dye, maybe. But let's kind of explore that and see how that goes. When it was wet, I feel that the distress ink that I laid down was brighter and warmer and just more apparent within those rocks. Now, if I were to spray it, I'm not quite sure. It might come back, I'm not sure, but let's lay down another layer of this anyway and see what happens. Okay, yeah, that looks better, to me at least. It's kind of a more interesting gray, I feel, than just laying down that gray and then the blue. In terms of the temperature range, it's certainly more interesting because we've taken it from cools into the warms. Maybe I'll even try some of this antique linen in my sky for a little bit of warmth in the sky. Maybe that went too much into that tone, into the blue, so I just had it. I just had my blue one here. Let's see. Let's try to lay down a little bit more memento in there. Okay. Just so that warmth isn't quite so apparent. I mean, it is, but we'll try to subdue it slightly. Let's try the Bahama blue. Better, I think. Maybe I'll try to match the skies as well. Keep it in theme. Yeah, I don't know if I want to. Here's the other one that I just did yesterday. I don't know if I want to go that dark in this one. I don't know if it's kind of it's going to be a kind of a thematic approach. Maybe I do want to take it a little bit darker, just so that the skies match slightly more. They don't have to be identical, or anywhere close, but yeah, actually I think that looks better. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, let's go to black. Oops, I hear people gardening outside. I will hold on this if it gets too loud. Or I'll pause, I should say. Let's go in the bottom left and right corner for framing purposes. Okay, I think this is what this needed. It needed to... The shadows and dark values in the scene, I think, needed to be a little bit more defined, pronounced, because it's looking better to me now. It needed more contrast. And I think the forms look even more like volumes now, I guess. Okay, I'm going to pause this because I have a feeling it's going to get loud here in a second. So anyways, mention those kind of, in terms of the, I don't know, kind of the range of values maybe. They look a little bit more similar. I'm talking about just in terms of the lights and darks. In what the darks get to on each one. They're a little bit more balanced, I think. So, coming along. Okay. Pausing the... Okay, I think I'm able to finish this scene now. Sometimes taking a break from a scene is kind of good. It gives you a chance to kind of step away from a project and, I don't know, I was going to say take a look at it with fresh eyes. I don't know if it's really fresh eyes if you step away for 20 minutes, but in a way, that's so. Okay, let's take a look at the sky. We have these little kind of wispy clouds, and they're defined by the tone laid into it from the left and right side. Okay, so I'll come out of it, maybe, with that same type of thing, but starting from the middle and working out with this pigment ink. This is not going to be any kind of a major technique as far as something very apparent. It's going to be more of a subtlety, detail, subtle detail. How about that? Within this space, okay? Now, if I was working with like a brilliance ink, as opposed to the color box, Frost White, I might get more of an effect, okay, in terms of getting some texture up here. The Brilliance pigment ink dries much faster, but that being said, sometimes when that's laid down, you are stuck with it. So for me, I don't like having that degree of control with this type of look. You know, there's certain areas that I'll like to use some kind of more permanent, you know, faster drying pigment ink, but maybe not in this type of a situation. Just because I'm kind of winging it too, it's not really accomplished at that type of touch. Okay, so you can see these little splotches here. I'm just going to kind of blend them out a little bit. Okay. Right, so you can see these little wisps right here. Okay, just using that kind of motion with I don't know. This one's not particularly dry, like I often do with certain types of looks with this pigment ink, but why don't we do some of that now? I still need to do some additional pen work with some of the alcohol pens, but I'll just go ahead and add a little bit of this tone, or this white. Pigment ink around some of these areas in here. Maybe this tree is capturing a little bit of that light. Maybe that's too much. I'll take some of it off. It's just kind of turning the tree in space. In other words, it's kind of modeling it in terms of adding a little bit of light to it. Some on one half of the tree it's light, on the other half it's not, meaning it kind of gives the impression that you know, there's a little bit of a three-dimensional aspect to that object. I'm not going to add too much of this into this scene. There just doesn't seem terribly appropriate in this scene, at least, to do that. Okay, let's get to some of those other little effects using the pen. Alcohol-based pens. I'm trying to remember what color I colored those pants with in here. I think it was blue. This is an alcohol marker. It's the La Plume Permanent. Okay, just kind of fleshing in the scene a little bit. Those two characters. And, oh, before I forget, let me see. Okay, I have a little bit of black ink on this. We need a little bit of shadow, okay? Being cast by our two characters. And just streaking in a little bit of tone right at their feet. This was with some black ink. I need a little bit more on there. It was really dry. Okay, something like that. I'll enhance it a little bit with some additional pen work. Okay, that's that. Different colored blue. Just these are both light blue. Okay. And we have that little backpack there. How about a little bit of brown? Okay, let's take a look here and see see what we can do with these rocks in here. Okay, we have some areas in here that are darker than others, where I've added a little shadow using the dye-based ink. Why don't I do the same with a light gray alcohol marker? Okay, so I'm just kind of going along here on the shadow areas of the rocks. Doesn't have to be on all of them, but this is just going and reiterating what's in the design and what I did with a little bit of the toning. You know, I suppose you can do this whole scene with these pens too. I would kind of recommend the same type of thing, just oscillating your lights and darks a little bit. But doing these little things like this can add those volumes and light and shadow to the given areas. I'd recommend going light and moving into your darks. Just kind of for control, it's doing this really lightly. I mean, I'm not leaving much of a mark with the pen because it is very light. And some of the areas that I'm doing this on are darker than this, so it's not really showing up very much at all. But this is kind of getting me in the swing of things, you might say, using this one color. A light one that doesn't have much to say on here in terms of being visible. But then what I do is I'll move to a darker tone now. So it's kind of like getting your hand and your eye kind of ready for, you know, potentially incrementally darker tones if you want to add them. Now, this one's quite a bit darker. I wish I had some kind of intermediate, or maybe I do. But let's add that. I'll start this off in some of the darker areas. One of the things about alcohol pens too is you can kind of take a blender and blend these in a little bit more with the blender if you have too dark of a mark with, you know, any given color. But as you can imagine, this little tip right here, you can get much more detailed than you can with a, you know, a foam tip. So foam tip, in terms of the stylus tool, is really good for kind of general large areas, and working with your finer tip tools are, you know, those are good for the details. Okay, so hopefully these rocks are kind of becoming a little bit more defined. And yeah, it's a little bit too dark, too bright. Let's see what this one is. Brownish gray, I like that one. And this is apricot, yeah. So let's add this apricot in some of those areas where I've added a little bit of that warmth using one of those distress ink colors, okay? It's kind of like you're putting a glaze of tone onto certain things by doing things like this. You know, this is a transparent color that you're working with, so the colors underneath are going to show through. The shadow area right here underneath the figures. It gives them a certain element of being opaque, right? They're casting a shadow. Alright, this is where... I kind of wish I had a gray... I think I need to get a gray gel pen. I don't know if I've even seen them before. But that would come in handy in a scene like this. Okay, this is a white paint pen by Sharpie. Okay, it's just blue. It's pastel blue. Kind of a dark pastel blue. I was looking at this and suddenly I was thinking, wait, do I want that in there? But let's add a little bit of texture to some of these rocks. Okay, it kind of stands out a bit, so I'm not going to add too much of it. It'll just be kind of a little bit of texture here and there. I'm kind of adding it over areas that are approximately the same value, so it doesn't stand out too much. And I just want to give it some texture. I mean, these rocks, you know, granite has a lot of texture in it. So, just adding some of this in here is might provide a little bit of visual interest to the scene by introducing a different texture. And potentially it could be as subtle as I want it to be, because I can lay it just only in those areas that are a similar value. It's kind of like a light tone. It's lighter than I thought when I laid it down there, but you can see those little dots like that. See that? Right over here. Okay, this is looking at it really up close. You can see a whole cluster of them right there, but it kind of blends in a little bit because the background is almost the same value as it. It's a different hue, but you can see that right there and there. A little bit up here. But when you look at it as an overall, you know, it blends in pretty good. Okay, now we can do the same type of thing with white. Okay, and I'll add that just in those areas that are very light. I'll try to integrate it if I happen to have added a little bit of blue in there. Those areas, I'll have the kind of this white kind of interspersed with some of that blue. So I'll have this kind of meeting place of those similar textures. Different values and different hue, but similar texture and all. Alright, so that's what that looks like. Let me see right here. This is a Uniball Signo white gel pen. Okay, so something like that. We bring it up closer when we're talking about rocks, and you can see those textures in the rock like so. Okay, add a little bit more white down here, less up here because it's lighter down here. Okay, so we retain some of that lightness of the paper, and it gives us the ability to add in these textures within those spaces. Okay, alright, so that for me looks pretty complete as far as the overall statement of I guess whatever I'm going after, which was kind of those textured massive rocks, okay, but they're somewhat there's a differentiation within the space using shadow, But overall, it's fairly unified with common colors and textures, okay? It certainly looks different than when it was first stamped out, right? Because we can see these different volumes. This rock stands out a little bit more. This one looks like it's coming out more. This one does. And you just go in there and you just start kind of laying down some tone here and there, but leave some light areas. I mean, I could have left this one lighter, and that could have stood out more. You know, this could have been in the darkness, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just whatever you choose to make it. Gray tones and some, just like in this scene where I've added some pinks and blues into the scene, greens down here within a given space of overall brown. Something like this with some tans and greens, you know, can kind of extend the range, the visual range of, you know, an otherwise, you know, kind of a monotonous big area of gray and black or something like that. So a good way to add in color. I mean, it's not super vibrant or intense at all, but I do feel it's somewhat of a rich palette, but it's just understated in this case, so just by using. Okay, so anyway, I hope you enjoyed this scene here. Trying to think of a name. Walk in the Sierras, maybe. Something like that. Afternoon climb. Who knows? Anyway, fun stuff. And as I was doing this one, it occurred to me, I think I know what the next one will be, using those two figures there. Keeping in the theme of the walk. And I think it'll be a beach scene, okay? And I'll have yet to figure out what I'll do with that one, but I think it's going to be a nice kind of foggy scene, because where I grew up on the central coast of California, this place called Lompoc, when we used to go to the beach, and that was all the time. I think I saw maybe the sun come out of the clouds maybe once or twice that whole time. It's always foggy in that area. But yeah, that's what I'll do next, and looking forward to doing that one. But anyways, this scene was a lot of fun. Thanks for watching, and thanks for tuning into the channel.